Hi everyone, and welcome back to the course today. We left off on exercise 8 in chapter 4. We just gotten to the point where we were reviewing the response from FME server. I'll just go over that just for a little bit to make sure everyone's on the same page of where we are and what we're doing. So in this exercise, we're creating a job chaining system. So we're running jobs using the REST API through the FME desktop interface. We started with a creator. First, you have to use a creator if you are using an HTTP caller or something to feed into the HTTP caller just to kick it off. Next, we use this HTTP caller transformer. And this is what we use if we're using a REST command within FME desktop. I went over briefly the different types of authorization there are in the HTTP caller. And then we used this command within the HTTP caller. One thing that I didn't mention yesterday that I probably should have is automatically within the HTTP caller, it starts off with HTTPS. Now, our servers that we have installed on these training machines don't have SSL. So it won't work properly if it's HTTPS. However, that can be solved if you just remove the S. So if you got an SSL error yesterday, that's what was going on. So for these exercises, it's best to delete what's already in the request URL and copy the full URL over. So we set up our HTTP caller. We're posting, so that's action where you're creating something in the server, so we're running a job. We're using the submit call, which works asynchronously in our server, so we'll have to check to make sure the call has completed. And then we're running under samples the Austin download workspace. We are accepting application JSON back from the server, and we are authorizing with our token like we did exactly what we did in Postman. Our upload body was specified here by opening the text editor and copying this in. And then the content type was specified down here. So that's the big change from going from Postman to FME, is we need to specify the content type, not in the header up here, but actually by the body itself. And then we used feature caching to look at the response from our server. So you should have a response something similar to this. It doesn't exactly have to be 6, but it's probably similar. And now we need to use that ID for our next call because we're checking in to see if the job was submitted successfully, or completed successfully, I should say. So to do that, we need to use a JSON flattener. So click on the canvas and start typing in JSON, and the JSON flattener will appear. So we're trying to expose the job ID, and that's actually pretty simple. We click the cogwheel to open up the JSON flattener. Our input source is not a JSON document, but instead it is an attribute. Oh, sorry, it is a JSON document, and that JSON document is an attribute. You can also read in a file or a URL here too. So if you're pulling something from online, that's how you would specify it in this box below. So we want to flatten, so that's okay. And under attributes to expose, we should write ID. So really in this transformer, all we're filling out is under JSON document. We're specifying that it's from the response body. And under attributes to expose, we want to expose the ID. And so now I'm going to click OK and accept those parameters. So we want to see that this was run correctly. So we can click on the JSON flattener and select run to this. So this response is cached, and if we select run to this, it will only run the JSON flattener. So I've selected my JSON flattener, and now I'm going to run to this. If I click on my magnifying glass, I should see I have a new attribute created with the ID. Now we can use this ID in our next call to check on the job status. So we want to see if the previous job was successful or not. So we're using the ID to check in on it. To do this, we're going to have to make another REST API call. So we're using the HTTP caller. So I added another HTTP caller and I attached it to my JSON flattener. Now I'm going to click the cogwheel. Under HTTP method, I have a get here. So that goes with the HTTP method of get. Next, I have the URL. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in the request URL. Under your server host, I'm going to write in localhost. And as you can see here, I'm using the value that was created in the JSON flattener as my ID. So what I just did there, I changed my HTTP method to get, and then my request URL has been updated in here. I switched your server host to localhost and made sure that there's no S by the HTTP. So I'm going to click OK and fill out my headers. So again, query string parameters are right below, but we're looking for the headers. So we'd like to accept application JSON, and then authorize using our token. So it's FME token space token equals I'm finding my token, which we created together yesterday. I'm going to copy it and paste it in here. All right, so again, I filled out under headers, accept application JSON, because that's what I'm accepting back from the server. And then under authorization, I have FME token space token equals my token. One last thing you can change is instead of having response body as the response body attribute, I can be more clear about what I'm trying to receive. So I can write job underscore status here. And that way I know exactly the information that I'm trying to get when using this call. So I can click OK, accept those parameters. And now I want to rerun the entire workspace. So I don't want the cached information that we had before. I want to see if I rerun this call, will it work? So first I'm going to save. And then I'm going to click up here. See, we have the run. You can select what type of run you would like to do. And then I can select rerun the entire workspace. Or you can choose Shift F5 to rerun the entire workspace. And now I can check the output on the HTTP caller, the second one that we just placed. I can check the output here by clicking on the magnifying glass. Now the job status isn't as short as the response body, but I can click the ellipsis and it'll show me the entire job status. It's a little hard to see like this, so I can click the word wrap here to wrap this all together. So first, I clicked the magnifying glass. Then under job status, I clicked the ellipsis or the three dots you see there. And then the word wrap to show what's going on. So here I can see the status is equal to pulled. So what's happening is my FME desktop workbench is running so fast that the job hasn't run yet. So we need a way to either check that the job has run successfully or slow down the workspace itself. So I'll click close there. And first I want to expose the status. So I'll use another JSON flattener. So I'm going to click and add a JSON flattener to my workspace. Connect the output to the JSON flattener. And then click the cogwheel to expand. Under JSON document, I'm going to select the job status. And then under attributes to expose, I'm going to expose the status. So JSON document, I'm exposing job status. And then under attributes, I'm exposing the status. I'll click OK. And then add a tester. So I'm testing to see if the job status is not pulled. So I don't want to test to see if the job has run correctly, because sometimes a job won't run correctly and it won't be completed. So I want to know, as long as it's not pulled, I should have information of what's going on. So I'm adding a tester just by clicking on the canvas again and typing in tester. From the output of the JSON flattener, I'm going to attach it to the tester. Then I'm going to click the tester cogwheel to expand this menu. So I'm going to rename the tester with what I'm testing for. So it should be tester underscore job not pulled. On the left value, I'm going to select the down button, look for an attribute, and look for status. So I'm looking for a status that does not equal. So that's the exclamation point in the equal sign. So does not equal, and then pulled. And this should all be in capitals. And now I'll select OK. So if I ran this just like this, I would get to this point and it would fail because the job would be pulled. So I need to create a loop. I need to go back and keep testing to see if the job status is not pulled. And to do that, we can create a custom transformer. So creating a custom transformer is really easy. All you have to do is select the transformers that you'd like, right-click, and create a custom transformer. So now I'll just select the HTTP caller 2, the JSON flattener, and the tester. So I've selected these three. Now I'm going to right-click and create a custom transformer. So I selected those three, I right-clicked, and I created a custom transformer. Under name, I'm going to write job status tester. The category is web. And then under overview, I can write what this transformer is doing. I'll just copy and paste that. So this is the job status tester. I put it under the category of web, and then I just copied and pasted the description. Now when you click OK, it takes you to another page. So my main page has my job status tester, and then on my second page, I have a custom transformer. Now I'm going to add a loop to loop back to the beginning to keep on testing. So right-click on the canvas, and then insert transformer loop. And by default, it's going to go to the HTTP caller 2, which is what we'd like, because that's one that's checking our job status. And click OK. So attach the failed to the loop. And that's all you need to do. So let's run this workspace and see how many times it runs. So just click this Run Workspace button up at the top. Oh, sorry, I did that wrong. We need to rerun the entire workspace. Because we had the job status cached from last time, we gave the job enough time to run and complete successfully. But if you rerun the entire workspace, that cache disappears and it will rewrite over it. So this is actually faster than the training manual, or it's slower than the training manual, but it submitted less time. So in the training manual, when I ran it, I got 3.8 seconds and 77 run times. Here, it took 9.8 seconds, but it ran 37 times with 1 successful. So the loop is checking in on FME server as fast as possible. So in our case, this ran 37 times, which isn't too bad. However, if you had a slower job, this could hit the server thousands of times. So this isn't recommended if you have a large job. In this case, you would want to use something called the decelerator. And the decelerator will just cause a delay in your workspace and give the job time to run. So we're on step 12. We'd like to add an output to the custom transformer to bring it back to the main page. So right-click and insert transformer output. It's fine to leave it called output. And this output can be connected to the past. And then we'd go back to the main page. So what I did there, I just right-clicked, I inserted a transformer output, and attached it to the tester on the past port. So we can now leave the job status tester and go back to the main page. So now we need a new tester. This will test if the job has completed successfully. So under output, I'm going to connect it to the tester. Then open up my page. Again, I'm writing tester, but I'm writing what I'm testing it for. So I'm looking for tester, job, successfully, underscore run. The left value will have a status. The operator is equal, and the right value will equal success. And make sure this is all capitalized. So after the first workspace has succeeded, let's run a new workspace. So here, we're using an HTTP caller again. Connect the tester to the HTTP caller. Click the cogwheel, and the HTTP method will be post. Click the down arrow by the request URL. Open the text editor and paste the URL in the text editor. Under HTTP, or by HTTP, we want to write localhost if we're on the training machine. So now we're running a transact call, and the transact call will work synchronously, so we don't need to check in on it. And now I'll click OK. Under headers again, we want to accept application JSON and use our authorization as normal. So I'm accepting application JSON and authorization FME token space token equals, find my token again, copy and paste that. Next, we have an upload body. So by upload body, click the down arrow, open up the text editor, and copy and paste that in. Click OK. And we don't want the content type to be text. Instead, it will be JSON. So this is what your HTTP caller should look like. Just copy and paste the URL, open up the text editor, and replace your server host with localhost. The HTTP method should be a post. We're accepting application JSON, and we're authorizing with our token. And under body, we're changing out the body as well. Now click OK. And we can run the workspace again. So everything succeeded correctly. We can look. And actually the new one will be under response body. We can see it was successful. So we just completed this exercise. By doing this, we learned how to use the HTTP caller transformer in FME server. We also created a custom transformer that continually checks to see if FME server has run the job. And then we used the FME server REST API to run multiple jobs in a row. So before I move on, can I get hands up to see who has finished the exercise? So we're still waiting on a few people. I'll give a minute or two here. If you have any questions about the exercise, please let me know through the chat panel. I'd be happy to help. And please raise your hand once you finish the exercise. So someone asked how to get to see visual preview. If you're running FME Desktop 2019, it should be enabled automatically, but you might need to enable feature caching. Once you've enabled feature caching, you should see magnifying glasses appear. And you can click to inspect those attributes, and it should pop up on visual preview. If you're using anything that's not 2019, then you won't have visual preview, but you'll have a data inspector. So we're using a custom transformer for looping. If you want to loop, you just have to right click and insert a transformer loop. All right, so it looks like most people have completed the exercise. We do have these training machines until Friday, so even if you don't complete everything in this time, you can always complete it on Friday. Also, we'll be coming up to a break soon. I'll try to give a break at 10 a.m. today. So if you need help during that time, I'm happy to help you. Also, after the class is over, I'll stick around. So if you're still struggling with something, we can look into it together. So let's move on to Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Web Services, Web Service URLs, and the REST API. So new to 2019 in FME Server, we have something called Web Service URLs and FME Server apps. FME Server apps allow a user to run a workspace without having to log into FME Server. Web Server apps can be used to insert FME Server functionality into a third-party application. So we'll discuss mainly web service apps within this section. Sorry, a web service URL is what we'll be talking about in this section. So a web service URL looks very similar to a REST API request URL. However, this exists without, not within the space of the REST API, so it is different. So you should use a web service URL if you're doing something like data streaming or data download. With a REST call, the only way we can submit jobs is through something that is very similar to the job submitter service. So when you go to run a workspace in FME Server 2019 and you open up the advanced parameters, you should be able to see Share this workspace. This gives you options to share a workspace. Once you click that link, you'll be asked to create a token. This token will only have permissions to run a workspace unless you give it permissions to the resources folder as well, which you can specify. So for your token, it comes with a custom token name. And you can also write a description for it, which I highly recommend because I'm at a point now where I have lots of different tokens and I'm not quite sure what they're all for. Then you would click OK to create the token. So then a web service URL will run the workspace just by clicking on it. So like the REST API, a web service URL can run a job synchronously or asynchronously. By default, the job will run synchronously. If you'd like to run it asynchronously, you'd have to add your email in the email results to function in the email results to box. And then there's other different request parameters listed down below for request URLs, or web service URLs, sorry. You can use, if you're building a demo, both web service URLs and the REST API together. So if we look at the Easy Translator, when we're uploading files to the REST API, when we're uploading files to the server, we're using the REST API. However, once the job is submitted and we're returning a file to the user, then we're using a web service URL. So now we're moving on to exercise 9. And for this exercise, we're looking at this demo. So in this demo, when we draw a polygon, we can see that the query here is changing. This query is actually a web service URL. Then we can select different layers and change this to whatever we want. If we copy this query and paste it into Postman, we can just paste it under request URL using get. And then click send. Here we can see the response from the server. So using the web service URL, we will get JSON back from the server, just like how we did with the REST API. So this is a lot to look at, and I don't expect you to understand it all. However, we can see the service response and the job ID of what was submitted. If we scroll down, we can also see there is a download URL here, and that contains a link. If we clicked on the link, we would have the file that's requested. Within the headers, we can hover over things and check what they are and what they mean. And then we can also generate code snippets. So on step 9, if you click code, so it's right by cookies, just to the right, select code. We can generate a snippet and copy and paste. So this one is HTTP, but we can select whatever we want. So this is just showing what's returned by a web service URL, just to have you look at the JSON that's actually being returned from them, and showing how you could generate a code snippet in Postman. All right, and moving on to exercise 10. And then after exercise 10, I'll give everyone a break. If you were stuck on exercise 8, please let us know and we'll try to help you as best as we can. If not, I'm very happy to stay after the class and see if anyone needs any additional assistance. All right, so we're on exercise 10 now, sharing a workspace in FME server. So the second part of this course talks about how to create your own web application without using the FME server interface. However, for some people, using the FME server apps might be fine. It's a way that you can have a user without an FME server login actually submit jobs to your FME server. It's secure because it uses the token system as well. So I'll show you how to do that. First, we need to go to our FME server and select Run Workspace. So I'm in my FME server. If you aren't logged in from yesterday, we just need to log in with the account admin. Anyone can create these, but I find using one account to log in makes things more simpler while training. So log into your FME server, look up to the right here, or sorry, to the left, and we can see Run Workspace. Under Run Workspace, we can fill in the following parameters. So we're just looking under samples. The workspace would be earthquakes extrusion. And we're using the data streaming service. So samples, earthquakes extrusion, data streaming service. We have an advanced panel, and if we click down here, we can find Share this workspace. So once we select Share this workspace in the advanced panel, we can then create a token for the web service URL. So we can see here that in the web service URL, we can create a token, and we can set the expiry for the token and add a description. Also, we can set if users can upload any files with this web service URL. And we're actually getting the resource online, so I don't want any users to upload this file. And I'm not giving users any permissions to the resources in this FME server. Now I'll click OK, and we can click on the FME server app. With the FME server app, we can automatically run this workspace without being logged in to FME server. So we ran that workspace. You could run this from incognito as well. You don't have to be logged in. You can also send this to other people, and they should be able to run it as well. So if we click on it, it opens up a KML file. And this is looking at seismic activity in different regions and putting it into Google Earth. So it's very interesting. Discard. Now under Share this workspace, we can also see that we have a web service URL. So we'll be using web service URLs in exercise 17 if you are sticking around for the next part of this course. But with the web service URL, instead of being taken to a page where you can enter in parameters, the job automatically runs. And we can see we have a file produced. Web service URLs and created an FME server app. Now let's move on to chapter 6, which is server admin tasks. So in this chapter, we're focusing on the server admin tasks that you can do through the REST API. So it gives you an overview how to upload a resource, list the resources available, and download a resource. So these would be handy if you're looking to create a web application with the REST API. So let's go to exercise 11. So these are the calls that you would use to manage your resources in FME server using the REST API. So most file management can be handled through the REST API. Typically, if you're looking to use the REST API for file management, you're trying to build a web application that allows a user to upload files, run a translation, and return a file to the user. And these calls are also available in the FME JavaScript API, which will be used in the course that is taking place next week. But let's look at what they look like through the REST. So we're first going to use a call to upload a file. So in Postman, click the plus sign. Under get, we actually want to replace that to post. We're creating a file on our server. And we can copy and paste this request URL. And always, instead of your server host, we'll want to use localhost here. So this is HTTP, localhost, FME REST, and then it goes through. We're uploading to our resource shared data folder. Next, we can see we have the params and authorization, but we need the headers tab here. So I'm clicking on the headers. Next, we need to write in the content type. So this will be application octet stream. So this is something we haven't seen before. Next, as always, we're accepting application JSON back from our server. So accept application JSON. Next, we have the content disposition. And this I recommend that you copy and paste. Here we specify what's being uploaded, so it's an attachment, and it will be called uploadingfiles.csv. Next, we have our authorization, which should be saved as a preset. So under key, if you just type TO, we have our authorization, and then our token here. So again, under content type, we're using application octet stream. We're accepting application JSON. Under content disposition, we're naming our file uploadingfiles.csv, but it's best just to copy and paste that over. And then for our authorization, we're using the FME token. So it's not a preset header, content disposition. It's something that you'll just have to type in yourself. So next, we'd like to move over to the body. Click on the body and then click on raw. Sorry, click on binary. So body, binary, and we should see you can choose a file to upload here. So select choose files, and navigate to this location. So we're in the C drive, FME 2019, data, and then cell signals, and this cell signal CSV file. So we're uploading this as binary to our server. Then we can click send after we've uploaded this file. And we can see 201 created, and we have a file name called uploadingfiles.csv. When using this call, there are different parameters you can set. So if you'd like to create directories, you'd have to add that into your path so it can be set to true or false. And if you'd like to overwrite, you can select true or false as well. So I'll just give everyone a moment to complete that. All right, so now after we've uploaded our file, we can list files within that folder in FME server. So here I'm clicking the plus sign again, and I'm entering my URL and my headers into Postman. So it's get, and then I'm looking in the exact same folder I just uploaded to. I'm pasting my request URL in and changing your server host to localhost. Now I can fill in my headers. So I'm going to accept, application JSON, and under key I'm going to type a TO to get my header preset of token. So again, under accept, I'm accepting the value of application JSON, and under authorization I have my preset token. Now I'm going to click send. So I can see I received a 200 OK response. It was pretty quick. And these are, well, this is a folder I have in my shared data folder. And then I can see I have my file here. And now I can even download a file. So I'm going to click the plus button here and fill in the request to download a file. So under get, I'm going to select post instead. And I'll copy and paste this request URL in. Under your host, I'm going to write localhost. And I'm going to go over to my headers. So this time I'm not accepting JSON, but I'll be accepting application octet string. Next, I have content type. And this will be URL encoded. and then my authorization as always. So type TO and get to the token preset. So here under headers, I'm accepting application octet stream. The content type is under URL encoded, and I typed TO to get the token. Next, I can move over to the body of the call. Under body, we'd like to select raw, and then copy and paste the contents below. So in the body section, clicking raw and copying and pasting these contents from the user manual. And now I'm going to select send to download this file. So this is a CSV and it's coming directly back to Postman, so it'll just take a while to download here. If you were creating a web application, it would not take this long to download, but I don't think Postman is really made to handle this type of stuff. So this is normal, where it looks like it's kind of freezing up, so you just have to be patient with it. All right, perfect. So it did work. It took me a little longer this time. When I first ran it, it took about 1900 milliseconds. This time it's taking 3000, but it did come back. So through this exercise, we're able to upload a CSV to our server. We're able to list the files in our server, and then we downloaded that same CSV. Can I see hands up for everyone who's completed this exercise? Okay, so we're still waiting on a few more people, so I'll give everyone time to catch up. As always, if you have questions, please just chat them out to me. So I'll give another minute or so just for people to catch up. Once you finish the exercise, please just raise your hand. So I got a good question, which is how to save these calls for later. Right by the send button, there is a save. So you can save your calls for later. So I think we'll need another minute or so just to let people finish up. All right, so I think we should move on to the next exercise. So we're on exercise 12. So using a shared resource as a workspace output location. So we're going to create this workspace. So click New and blank workspace. So open FME Workbench and create a new workspace. Now we're going to add an Excel reader to this workspace just by typing Excel and adding this Microsoft Excel reader. By dataset, you can select ellipsis and navigate to the dataset. So FME data 2019, data, planning, and then business licenses. And then select OK to add the reader to the canvas. Workbench seems to be taking a long time to do that. Okay, perfect. Next, I'm going to add a CSV writer to the workspace. Click on the canvas and type in CSV. So we're looking under writers and selecting the CSV writer. So the CSV file definition should be copy from reader. That's what I got by default here. And then select OK. And now this is adding my writer to the canvas. I simply connect my CSV, my Excel file to my CSV file, just like that. Now I'm going to open up my publish parameters here and find my destination data set. I'm going to right-click on my destination data set and select the first option, which is to edit the value. Here I can see the destination CSV file, so I can click the drop-down menu under user parameters. I have FME server parameters, and here I can find my shared resource temp folder. So that's a bit of a step, so I'll do it again. By my destination data set, click the drop-down arrow, go to User Parameters, FME Server Parameters, and then go to the Shared Resource Temp folder. So the Shared Resource Temp folder is a folder that gets cleaned regularly. So you can set how often you'd like your folder to get cleaned out. I think by default it's about a day. So if you have files that you are creating and you don't want to store in your server forever, using the Shared Resource Temp folder is definitely the best way to go. So I'm going to select that and then select OK. Then on my source data set, I can just copy what I have in here. This is an Excel file that we'll be uploading later. So I can copy that, right-click on my source data set, publish parameter, and enter in that value. And then click OK. So I like converting my published parameters to private parameters if I know it's something that I'm not going to be using in the call. That's because I do find the process of writing out all the parameters a little complicated, and it's easy to simply misspell something and then have your request be wrong because you didn't specify the published parameter correctly. So when I have a published parameter that I know I'm not going to be changing, I'll right-click on it and turn it into a private parameter. That's way it's still there and it can be changed. However, if it's a private parameter, it just accepts that default. Now I'm going to publish this to FME server. So I'm saving this first because we have had some difficulties with our training machines. And this should be called Chapter 6, Exercise 12.fmw. So I'm saving that, and now I'll upload by going to File, Publish to FME server. So I'm using the connection we created earlier, and then clicking Next. Now I already set my name of my workspace to Chapter 6, Exercise 12.fmw, so I can click Next here as well. Then I have my job submitter service checked off, and that's perfect. That's what I want. So now I can click Publish. So everything's been published up to FME server. If your workspace does crash there like mine did, it is okay. It will have published successfully. Oh, Workbench unfortunately crashed. All right, so let's click the plus button, and under Get, we're going to switch this to Post. So now we're uploading the data. So by Get, we switched it to the Post, and we're going to copy and paste this URL in here. And as always, I'm switching your server host to localhost. At the end of last exercise, I did mention that there are some more variables you could use, and this is actually a query string parameter. So here we're going to create a new folder when we're uploading this data. So after you've filled in the request URL, click Headers. So I've clicked on my headers. And now under Headers, I'll write content type. Application, octet stream. I'm going to accept application JSON. Now we're using this content disposition again. And copying and pasting this directly from the manual. And then under authorization, I'm just going to type TO to get my token again. So again, content type will be application octet stream. We're accepting application JSON. The content disposition will be attachment, file name equals business licenses, and then the authorization is the parameter or the preset that we created before. So after I filled in the headers, I can select the body. So under body, I'll select binary. And I'll choose a file. So now we want to choose a different file. So under the C drive, FME data 2019, data, planning, and business licenses. It appears here and we can upload it. Just click send to upload. So now I can see my path has been created and I have a new file called business licenses. Now I can run the job using FME server. So instead of get, I'd like to use post. And copy and paste this URL where it says URL. Now here you do have to be careful. This path is going to the Rust training folder and then chapter 6 exercise 12.fmw. If you saved your workspace as anything else or in a different repository on the server, you will have to change that for this call to work. Now under headers, type in accept. Application JSON. The content type, again, will be application JSON. And then type in TO. So again, under headers, we're accepting application JSON. The content type is application JSON as well. And then we're using the authorization preset that we set before. Next, click on the body. Click raw and copy and paste this publish parameter in. So before, when I was talking about creating private parameters instead of published parameters, I just like doing that because it's easier than adding in the JSON here. I tend to make a lot of typos, so sometimes it can be frustrating when a call is not working, and simply because I made a typo writing it out. So the less I have to write, the happier I am. So now let's click send. And we'll see we got a 202 accepted, and my ID is 13. That's simply the job ID. So if you have another job ID there, it's perfectly fine. So now we're checking on the job again to see if it's run successfully. So click on the plus sign here. Under get, copy and paste this URL in. As always, we're changing your server host to localhost. However, there's another thing we have to change here, which is this job ID. So the job ID is at the end. Right now it just says job ID, but it should be whatever was returned from your server. In my case, this is my 13th job on my server, so I'll simply type in 13. You can always go back and look to see what your job ID was if you forgot it. Next, under headers, type in accept, application JSON, and the authorization under TO. And then click send. So here I can see everything was successful. And now I can download the resulting file. So under the plus sign, we'll go to post, copy, and paste, and type in localhost. Now under headers, type accept, application, octet stream. Under authorization, type TO to get your token, and then content type. We're looking for a URL encoded. So again, under application, there's octet stream, authorization, just type in TO. You should be able to select your preset, and then content type, we can select URL encoded. Next, we have the body. Click raw, copy and paste this into the body in Postman. And click send. So this isn't the best way of downloading a file through Postman. It is very simple to do using the FME JavaScript API. So we'll be talking about that in week 2 of the course, because this does take a while and it is a lot of setup. If you're using the JavaScript API, it's just so much easier to do. But it's good to know what this process would look like if you were creating a web application. Okay, perfect. So we do have everything available. Can I get hands up for people who need more time with this exercise? So not if you finished, but if you'd like a little more time to finish up this exercise, would you mind raising your hand, please? So we do have a few people who do require a bit more time. So let's wait to 10:35 and then we can continue on with chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the last chapter of the day of this course. So we have 3 exercises left and then we're all finished. So we'll wait until 10:35 and then we'll continue on with chapter 7. Okay, perfect. If you're still finishing up, that's okay. I'll just be doing a little talking for a bit. So next, let's talk about job management and the REST API. So job management in FME server is primarily done through job queues. So job queues are a mechanism for sending jobs to a specific engine. So the common uses for this is controlling the priority of job requests. You can set the priority in the queue. So you might have a high priority queue. These are things that you want to get done right away. So you could set those to a high priority queue. You could also be sending a job to an engine that's close to a data source. You could be sending a job to an FME engine that supports a specific format. So if you have a 64-bit FME server and you have a 32-bit engine and a 64-bit engine, you'd want to send your ArcGIS jobs or ArcMap jobs to the 32-bit engine. So you might want to use a queue for that, or you might want to reserve an FME engine for a scheduled task or reserve them for quick jobs. See, when you create a job queue, you can assign one or more engines to that queue. And then you can run a job with that queue, and that will decide how it handles the job. You can also assign a repository to the queue. And by default, all jobs that fall within that repository will fall under that queue. So all engines and repositories are assigned to a queue, but by default, they're assigned to the default queue. I do have a quick poll here. So which is not a reason to use job queues? All right, so I'll give everyone about another 30 seconds to think about this. All right, so it looks like most people have voted, so I'll close the poll. And I'll give you a hint that 100% of you got this correct. So you would not want to use a job queue if you're going to change the destination of the log file. All right, let's go to exercise 13. So previously job management was not handled by queues, but instead was handled by job tags. So in the REST API, we're still using tags as the endpoint, but anytime you see tags, think job queues because that's what we're using now. All right, so now let's create a job queue. So here we can use post, and we're creating, and that's why we're using a post. Copy and paste this URL over. And write localhost. Next, enter in the headers. So here we have content type. The value is URL encoded. We are accepting application JSON and typing in TO to get our token header. So again, that was content type, URL encoded, accept, application JSON, and then the authorization, as always, just using our preset there. Now we can move over to body. Once we're in body, select raw and copy and paste this in. So here we're setting up what engine this queue will be applied to. It's applied to engine 1. We're giving it a name, which is high priority, and we're giving it a priority of 1. So at first this confused me because I didn't think 1 would be the highest priority, but now I think of it like you're number 1. That's the highest priority. So the highest priority is 1, and then I believe the lowest priority is 10. And now click send. Here we don't get a response, but we can see it was 201 created. So that means the resource was created. Next, I'm going to click the plus sign. Instead of get, I'll write post and copy and paste this over. So we have a job queue, and now we're going to assign an engine to the job queue. So instead of your server host, I'll write localhost here and leave everything else as is. Under headers, I'll write content type. And again, this will be form URL encoded. So for short, if you write URL, it will pop up. Then accept I'll write application JSON, and then TO to get our token header preset. So again, under content type, it's URL encoded. Accept is application JSON, and then I'm typing in TO to get my header preset. Next, again, I'll click the body tab, click raw, and paste in this information. And then click send. So I can see here I have no content, but that's what's expected. Now this is a call to assign a repository to a job queue. So again, click the plus symbol. Under get, switch that to post, and copy and paste this in as well. So copy and paste. Change your server host to localhost. Under headers, write content type. And then URL encoded. We're going to accept application JSON. And then under authorization, type TO to get the header preset of token. Next, switch to the body tab, click raw, and copy and paste the repositories in. So here we're assigning the REST training repository to the high priority queue. Again, click send. We'll see no content, but that indicates it was successful. Now we can go to our FME server and see if it actually was successful. So if we click on repositories, we should see everyone else is assigned to the default queue, but our REST training was assigned to high priority. So you can actually specify a job to run with the job queue in the request. So that's done through the TM directive. So under tag, which you can think of like the queue, you can submit it through there. There is a note here that we still have the priority tag. This has been deprecated, so don't use that. If you need to use priority, use a job queue instead. And you'd specify it under TM directives, and we'll see that within the next call. So since our REST training already has this high priority tag, we'll be using the samples and running it under the high priority tag to show you how to submit it through a call. So simply click the plus button here. Under get, switch this to post. And then copy and paste this URL in. Switch your server host to localhost. Under headers, write content type, application JSON. We're accepting application JSON as well. Then under authorization, type TO to get our header preset. So content type is application JSON. We're accepting application JSON 2, and we're using that token. Now let's switch over to body, select raw, and copy and paste this in. So here we see the published parameters set up like normal, but we actually have this high priority queue in there as well. So that was under body. I just copied and pasted everything in here. So now I can select send. I received a job ID of 14. So now I can go back and check if this job was run correctly by clicking the plus sign here. We're keeping the header or the method to get, and we can copy and paste this URL in as well. So under your server host, I'll write localhost. We do have a job ID to add here. For me, that was 14, but for you, that may be different. Next, I'll move on to headers. Go accept application JSON. And under authorization, type TO to get our token. And then we can select send to run this call. So here we can see we still have a priority of -1. That's because it's deprecated and doesn't matter, so don't pay attention to that. But it was run under the high priority tag. So through this exercise, we created a job queue using the REST API. We assigned an engine to a job queue. We've also assigned a repository to that same queue. And then we run a job using the REST API and assigned that queue within the job. I think this is a perfect place to take another break. So we'll come back at 11 a.m. Next, we'll be looking at job history and actually creating a workspace that shows you your job history on your server, and this is using the REST API. And then we'll look at the automations REST API as well. So we have some interesting stuff ahead of us to end off the day. If you have any questions, Laura and I can assist you in things up here. I think we'll end basically right on time. So if we do end early, Laura and I will stick around, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. So let's talk about job history. So you can get the job history throughout your FME server with a REST call. For this, you might want to use something called pagination. So basically, you can only limit how many responses you get from a server. So for this call where you're retrieving job history, you would gather 1,000 responses in one request, and then you'd have to go back and gather the next 1,000. So to do this, you would use the offset. So in your first call, you would gather 1,000 jobs from the server. In your next call, you'd want to use the offset of 1,000 to get all the jobs in your server. However, just a note on this, if you do have quite a busy server and your jobs have lots of published parameters in them, this can overwhelm your FME server. So use this with caution. If you are making repeated calls to your server and your jobs do have a lot of responses or a lot of published parameters in them, it might overwhelm your server at one point. All right, so let's create a workspace and retrieve job results from that workspace. So I'll have to open my FME desktop again. It's just going to take a little bit to load. So here we're creating an HTML page with the responses from our server with all the jobs we've ran so far during this course. Oops, too far. Okay. Now we're going to add a creator to our FME server. In this creator, we can accept the default parameter. So just leave everything blank. We don't need to change anything. Okay, perfect. Next, we can use the HTTP caller. And attach the creator to the HTTP caller. Click the cogwheel on the HTTP caller to open it up. Under the request URL, copy and paste this in. Open the text editor. And change this to localhost. Click OK. And then we'll use the get HTTP method. Next, we'll have to fill in the query string parameters. So click the down arrow by query string parameters. The name will be limit. And we're limiting this to 1,000. And then our offset will be 0. So we're okay accepting the first 1,000 responses. I only have 14 on my server, so I wouldn't need to add anything more. But if you did have a large number of jobs running on your server, you might want to use this offset function. So we filled in our query string parameters. Next, we have our headers. So we can accept application JSON, and then scroll down. Next, we can use this authentication box. So this is a different way of authenticating in FME server, in desktop. This is the method I like to use because it's less typing. But here we're just using the admin account. Next, click OK and select Run. If we click the magnifying glass, we can see we have a response body. Click on the ellipsis by the response body to view the full thing. We're already on word wrap, so we can see there. So this is all the information that's coming back from FME server. This is 14 jobs, so you can imagine how big it would be if you had something like 1,000 jobs. Click Close, and then add a JSON fragmenter. Attach the HTTP caller to the JSON fragmenter and open it up. Click the down arrow and select response body. In the JSON query, we're looking in items, and then we'll need the wildcard or a star there. So we can open the text editor and add square brackets, quotation, items, end quotation. So under JSON, you can see that down here as well. But you have square brackets, quotation, items, quotation, end square bracket, and then you have the star as well. And click OK. I'm not sure why there's backslashes in there, but those backslashes should be removed. It's just JSON, items, and then the star there. You can also see it here. This is the one that you would like to use if you're copying and pasting it in. I do have a little tip here, which is you can also use the feature reader to parse JSON. So when you're using the HTTP caller, one of the options is you can, instead of writing to an attribute, you can write to a file. Then when you read the file in, you can use a feature reader. And if we're reading in JSON, we can have parameters and it can auto scan the schema for you. Or you can come up with a JSON query and it'll kind of guide you through it. So you don't need to do this step on your own. You can see that in this tutorial that's linked here. So that's tutorial, getting started with JSON. It walks you through how to create those JSON queries. If you'd like to look how I got going to items first and then looking at everything in items, you can see what we have here in items. And you can see this is what we're trying to access. When I'm flattening JSON, often I'll put it into another program and have it print in pretty print so I can see kind of the layers of the JSON that I'm trying to parse through. It makes it much easier than having it in something like this where it's just kind of a block. So we're not quite done with the JSON fragmenter yet. After you've copied and pasted this in here, paste it from here, not the one above. We can go through and we can flatten this out as well. So we're looking for items, time submitted, and status here. So under attributes to expose, click the ellipsis here. We're looking for ID, time submitted, and status. And then click OK. So in our JSON query, we have this items and the star. And then in flattening down here, we're exposing the ID, the time submitted, and the status. And then clicking OK. Next, we have an attribute keeper. So we have a lot of attributes here, but I only really care about 3. So I'm going to use the attribute keeper to select the attributes I'd like to keep. So under attribute keeper, I'm going to select ID, time submitted, and status. And now I'm going to select OK. And someone did have a very important question, and that was if the attributes to expose, if they are case sensitive, and yes, they are. So the time submitted in there, the S needs to be capitalized. So let's run this and see what we have. Okay, perfect. So we have 14 jobs. So we have 14 different attributes coming through. And this is what we have. Now I added a date time converter because I find this very hard to read and hard to understand. So I'll use the date time converter on this time submitted property. So I'll write date time converter. And attach it to the output of the attribute keeper. And I'll select this cogwheel to open it up. Under date time attributes, I'm going to select time submitted. And I can auto detect the format, and my output format will be this year, month, day. So that's FME date. Oh no, that's not. That's ISO date. The difference between FME date and ISO date is one has little dashes in between, so it just makes it more readable. Repair overflow, I'm going to select no, and then pass through nulls, empties are missing. Nothing should be missing here, but I'm still going to select no for that. And now I can hit OK. Now I can create a table with the job history results. So I'm going to use a sorter. The date time converter is attached to the sorter. I have attribute ID here. This is numeric, and this will be descending. So this is just going to sort by ID. By default, it's sorted by the time the job finished. And I didn't really like that. I thought it was neater to have the IDs in order. So that's why I'm using the sorter to sort it. Now I'm going to select OK and continue on with my workspace. Next, I'm going to add an HTML report generator. That gets attached to my sorter and open it up. Under page contents, I'm going to have a custom HTML, which is very down at the bottom here. And then click and add the header here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that over. Next, we can add a table. And under default, it'll be under ID, The column name is job ID. The status will be job status. And then under time submitted, it'll be called time submitted. And now I can click OK. So again, custom HTML, and then I have a table. My contents are ID, status, and time submitted. And then job ID, job status, and time submitted here. And I'll leave that open for a second. All right, so now I'm going to click OK. So next, there's the date time converter, and I'm going to add an aggregator here. So by the output, I'll attach it to the aggregator. And click the cogwheel to open it. Under count, I'm going to write date count. And I'm only interested in attributes. There's no geometry here. And we're going to merge all incoming attributes. So this is important just to make sure you merge all incoming attributes. So under the mode, it's attribute only, count is date count, and then merge incoming attributes. And then select OK. And then add the HTML report generator. Attach the aggregator to the report generator and click the cogwheel. We have a bar chart here. The x-axis will be date job submitted. We have time submitted here and number of jobs per date. Under date count, under data attribute, write date count, and just keep the default as blue. Now click OK. We can add the HTML layouter. This is attached to the HTML report generators. We're giving the page a title, which is job history. And you can just keep it as it is. And then select OK. Finally, we can write out this HTML. So if you type HTML again, you can access the HTML writer. We're going to save it to the C, FME 2019, output, training, and we'll call this job history. and then select Save and OK. Attach those two together, save the workspace, and click Run. So it looks like everything was completed successfully. If you click on the writer and then click on this open containing folder, we can actually view the HTML that was created. So here we can see it was created successfully. All right, so I went through that kind of fast. I'll give everyone another 5 minutes to catch up. As always, let me know if you have any questions. So I got a good question. So the question was, what if I wanted to put a different item on top from the HTML report generator? So what if you wanted the table on top of the bar chart? So that is also available. What you'd want to do is use an attribute creator or maybe an attribute manager and assign your different HTML components a 1 or a 2. Then use the sorter, sort by those components, and then write it out to the HTML report generator. After class, I can send you a link of how to do that. It was something that was done by Mark Ireland in his blog about the HTML report generator in 2016, and that's where I learned about it. So I'll just give a few more minutes to finish up the exercise. Okay, perfect. So I was able to find the link, so I'll just chat it out. Anyone who's interested in learning more, I'd recommend you go to that blog. So I'll just give another minute for everyone to finish up, and then we'll continue on to the last exercise. All right, let's continue on. Laura and I can help debug later on if needed. All right, so let's talk about automations. Automations are new to FME Server 2019. It's a UI that we've essentially placed on top of our notification system. So if you're completely new to FME Server, our notification system is what allows you to receive emails to your FME server, to send out new emails when a job has completed. You can also monitor a directory or monitor something else like a Dropbox or an Amazon S3 bucket. So automations are really interesting for us because they just allow you to take advantage of FME Server and its automation capacity. If you're interested in learning more about automations, there is a safe blog here, and we do have a tutorial on getting started with automations that go through the typical uses for automations. So automations allow a user to set up a workflow in response to events. These events can be internal or external. So it could be internal, something happening within your FME server. This would be like a directory watch to a folder that your FME server can see. And by external, a Dropbox or an S3 bucket. So with the REST API and automations, I think the main idea is you may not want your automations to be enabled at all times. So you might want to send, with automations, you can send a job to a different queue if you wanted to, depending on if it was day or night. So my idea with, the automations tutorial would be how to turn on and off your automations using the REST API on a schedule. So to do this, we'd want to log into our FME server. And so I'm already in my admin account here, but now I would like to go down to projects. So this automation actually comes from a tutorial. So it's how to run a workspace when data arrives in a directory. So if you want to find out how to make this automation, this is where you'd want to look. Next, we'll click Projects and import a new project. So this is actually wrong. And someone pointed this out to me, so thank you. But it should be exercise 15 instead of 14, I believe. So yeah, it is exercise 15. And look in exercise 15, that folder, instead of exercise 14. So we're importing a project which contains an automation. So we need to select the import button. And then upload a file. So we're going to FME Data 2019, Resources, REST API, Chapter 7, Exercise 15. This is the automation that we're looking for, not in 14. So open that up, and we can see that the automation, the project is now in there. So we can click Import to import. So I just imported a project. This project contains an automation. So I can go to my automations and see where that automation is. So I'm going to click automations and then manage. And then view this automation. So currently the automation is running, so we can't edit it. However, if we wanted to, we could select different components and see exactly what we're doing. So in this case, this automation is watching a directory for a shapefile to be created. It's using this filter button to filter out the different files that are in a shapefile, because we only want to run this job with the .shp extension. And this workspace, all it does is produces copies of the shapefile created. So to use the REST call, we want to get this automation's ID, and by default, that's not exposed. So if you click the back button and get back to your automations, we can actually customize the columns that we see and expose this ID, which is by default hidden. So I'm on my automations page under manage, and now I'm going to click customize columns. I have ID right here, so it's currently under hidden columns. I just have to move it over for it to be a displayed column. So now the ID is displayed. And then click OK. So we can see the ID here. It'll be on the very right. However, it's kind of hard to copy from there, and it's too long that I'd feel comfortable writing it out. So another way to see the ID is when you click on the automation, the ID is in the last section here. So copy this ID, and we'll paste it into FME desktop. And we'll want to create a new workspace for this. So first, add a creator. And then add an HTTP caller. So now I have my automation ID. I already have it copied and pasted, but I want to copy this URL as well. So I'm just going to paste this ID down below, and then I'll copy this full path as well. So I'll copy and paste this here. This should say your automation ID. And then this should say localhost. And the HTTP method is put. I'm going to select OK and make sure I got the full ID there. It's a little hard to tell. No, I didn't. So I need to copy enabled as well. And I'll leave mine open for a little bit just so you can see what it looks like in full. So this is what your request URL should look like. It's HTTP, your server host, which will be localhost, FME REST, v3, automations, workflows, your automations ID, and then a slash right there and enabled. And if you're looking for your automations ID, look in your server when you click automations. Oh, that's not what I wanted. When you click automations and you click on the automation, your ID will be in that URL. All right, now under headers, we'll write accept application JSON. Now under upload body, we'll want to use value equals false. So in this body, we're saying value equals false, and this will disable the automation. If we set it to value equal true, then this will enable the automation. And now I'm going to select OK. We don't want text here. Instead, we want URL encoded, which is down here. So under content type, you're looking for URL encoded. Next, we have our authentication. This will be basic under admin and admin. So again, if you scroll down, you can see what the full thing looks like. Under request URL, we have this. Your automation ID is pasted under workflows. Your method is put. The headers are accept application JSON. The upload body is value equals false. And then the content type is specified there. Then under use automations, it will be admin, admin. Select OK. We're going to save this. Under chapter 7, exercise 15, and then publish this up to FME server. So go File, Publish to FME server. It's under the web connection we created before. It's under the REST training repository. It's fine to use the job submitter, and we can click Publish. Now we want to go back to our server, and we'll go to create a schedule. So the reason why we're scheduling this is we want the automation to be turned off at night. So currently it's on. We're going to create a schedule to turn it off at night. And you can do the reverse as well. So if you wanted to turn it on in the morning, you can do that. So we're going to go to schedules and create a new schedule. So schedules is found on the left-hand side of your page. And then we can select new to create a new schedule. The name will be turn off automation. The category will be under utilities. We're not going to add a description. It should be enabled, repeat on interval, and now we can select the start time. We can select the start by clicking the calendar here. So when you select a date to start, you can actually select a time to start. So this will be when this automation starts. I want to turn it off at night, so I'm just selecting a time. Any time at night will do. I can select OK. Go to REST training. And go to Chapter 7, Exercise 15. That's the workspace. And select OK. Now I'm creating a new automation, a new schedule to turn off my automation, but it's scheduled for a time at night. Something that's new to FME 2019 is you can actually trigger an automation to run. So even though it's not scheduled to later, you can trigger a schedule to run. So even though it's not scheduled to later, if you hit trigger, this will run. So now I'm going to hit this trigger button. I get a message that my schedule was triggered. I can go into my jobs, see if it's been completed. And it looks like it was. So if I go to my automations, under manage, I should see now my automation is disabled. So if you wanted to shut off an automation at night, you could do that, and you could also turn it on in the morning. If you have multiple automations running, you can have them running at different times of the day and schedule it all using the REST API. So that's the new automations REST API call. So you can use a workspace to call the FME server REST API to disable an automation. Through this exercise, we imported a project together in FME server. We were able to find the automation ID and set up a schedule to run a workspace. So this is the end of the course. Next week, starting Tuesday, we'll cover Chapter 8 to Chapter 10. If you're signed up for the second half. If you're not, that's okay. I hope you enjoyed this one. Just some more information before we leave today. If you have any questions at all, just visit us at our website, www.safe.com. We have a great support team here, and there's many ways to reach out to us. So if you have a quick question, something that you think we can answer easily, live chat is definitely the way to go. If you have something larger that requires some time for us to look into, I'd recommend looking up a support case. We also have lots of partners you can go to, and our Safe blog here as well. If you need any help, we have FME manuals and documentations you can look over. We also have the FME community. So if you need to ask questions, you can post them on FME community. And there's forums as well and ideas exchange. So at the end of the course, we do send out feedback. The feedback is really valuable to us to know what to improve on our different courses. So if you could fill that out and send that back, that would be great for us. It's always great to know what people are enjoying and not enjoying about the courses. Also, if you finish this training, and so if you've stuck around for this time, you'll also get a certificate saying that you've completed this course. Finally, there's some troubleshooting. So if you're having trouble with your FME server, here's a troubleshooting guide. And this is the documentation page with all the REST API error codes. And the developer tools aren't really necessary until we go into the next section.